Hello Gainers, I'm Ralphie and welcome to the channel Fitter Philosophy. I am your host and I am doing a video on the second part of a little mini series relating to looking after a relative with dementia or Alzheimer's, both diseases which have a lot in common with one another and are very prevalent in the modern world. Certainly there's a lot of research going into the contributing factors, and lifestyle, lack of physical activity and lack of health and the quality of food we eat has got a lot to do with it. But inevitably it's more complex than that, and hopefully a cure will be found for this terribly debilitating disease, because unfortunately individuals who we may know, who we are related to, can start to basically lose their identity. So it's quite a cruel disease in many respects, although the physical ailments are not particularly acute. It varies, it just all depends on individual circumstances. But I really want to talk about what I actually did to look after my mother, who had dementia, and I moved in 2010 to the Isle of Man to look after her. I quit my job, which I'd been doing for over 20 years, so it was a real wrench to do that, because we all get institutionalized in our lives. We all get kind of comfortable, even if it is uncomfortable, and we just get on with it, because that's human nature. But I was really forced to make a big decision as to whether she went into a nursing home to be looked after or whether I did it myself. And one of the factors was money, as it always is. And it was £1,000 a week for a nursing home. In other words, my mother, out of her own savings and out of the value of the house which she would have had to sell, which my brother and I would not have inherited, she'd be paying over £52,000 a year to be looked after in a nursing home, most of which would be profit for the commercial companies that own these institutions, because certainly the staff aren't particularly well paid and looked after or respected by wider society. And I'm just commenting an observation which is pretty self-evident. And I decided that in looking after her myself, I would be prepared to change her diapers, feed her, make sure she had enough to drink, entertain her, take her out for walks and exercise, talk to her, give her hugs. And I'm so glad I did it, because the simple activities happening all the time of looking after someone are very valuable for our own quality of life. We assume that a care home will care for a relative. We assume that it's often the right thing to do. And I'm here to tell you that that's not necessarily the case. It depends on your circumstances. And if you feel that you're up to the challenge of looking after a relative, you go for it. You do not need qualifications. You do not experience. All you need is motivation and humanity. That's all you need. Caring for an elderly relative with dementia is like caring for a young child, except they happen to be a bit more wrinkly, a lot older, and a bit bigger. Individual circumstances vary. I was fortunate. My mother was generally well behaved and placid and positive. She naturally had a positive outlook in life, and this was reflected within the parameters of the disease that was affecting her. But I know that for some other people it can be a lot more negative and a lot more violent. And don't get me wrong, my mother would occasionally have her temper tantrums suddenly out the blue for no apparent reason. And what I found the best way to deal with that was simply to walk out of the room, come back 3 minutes later all bubbly and positive and smiling, give her a hug and say, "Do you want a cup of tea and a chocolate biscuit?" At which point she'd completely forgotten all about her negativity, and her mood could completely flipped. It completely changed into something much more positive. Getting her down to bed at night was another challenge, in that I'd take her to bed and then she'd want to get up again and want to wander around the house and be quite listless. So I got into the routine of the cocoa formula. So she would assist me in making her cocoa. We'd make it sweet. We'd put it in our cup, or laterally her baby feeding bottle. And she'd go through the ceremony of drinking it, at which point she had it in her mind it was time to go to bed. So I didn't have to tell her or persuade her, she persuaded herself. Another thing that was a challenge was getting her to change her clothes when they needed washed. And what I discovered was the best way to do it was to put the fire on, make sure it's nice and cosy in the room, get a big fluffy blanket and wrap it round her, and then take the clothes off so that she never went from warm to cold, and then put up resistance against changing her clothes. Now, these little techniques really work, and I'd finish off by saying another technique, and it's purely through experience that you'll get to this yourself. Everybody's circumstances are different. But I remember we're in a supermarket, and we're at the biscuit aisle. And of course, she loved the biscuit aisle. I obviously got the fresh fruit and vegetables because I turned them into a smoothie for her, which was the only way she would eat them, but it worked. And she took out a kitchen knife from her pocket and started waving it at the biscuits. Now, there was other shoppers in the shop, including young mums pushing prams, who saw this old woman waving a knife in the biscuit aisle, and they sort of kind of freaked out slightly. I had to get the knife off her. And the way I did it was, Mum, could you give me the knife? No, point, poke. I said, Mum, could you hold these packets of biscuits? We're going to buy them. Oh, she held the packet of biscuits in her hand. I said, Mum, we're going to buy 2 packets of biscuits. Can you hold that in your other hand? Here, let me hold the knife. And that was the way it worked. So you don't go confrontational, you go persuasives, where you can't go and get a direct response to a request to change behaviour or get things done. You just go in a slightly roundabout way, keeping it positive. In other words, emphasising the reward, the immediate reward, because old folk with dementia are just like kids. They're just looking for the next bit of chocolate. That's what it is. Now, I looked after her for 10 years, and I have to say that it is of considerable satisfaction to me that in the twilight of her years, I extended the quality of her life hugely by taking her out, driving her about in the van, taking her for afternoon teas, going walks on beaches, all these things, because for the first time in my life, I had more time to do this because I wasn't working. Sure, I fixed myself up with a part-time job, self-employed, because you do that. And latterly, when she was confined to her bed, when she lost the power in her legs, this made things much, much easier for me, to look after her. And there was times, I have to say, that you felt that you were doing part-time hours in a full-time job, and that you rarely got any real space to yourself. And what I found was, to remedy that, she would go to bed about 10 o'clock in the evening and I'd be up till 3 in the morning. And that's the way it worked. That's the way I got time to myself. But latterly, when she was confined to her bed, as I say, made things so much easier for me as a carer. And when she passed away, she did so quietly, painlessly, at home, with her family, in her own bed. And that is a valuable, valuable situation if your circumstances allow it to happen for you. Everybody's circumstances are different, but let me tell you, we get caught into spending our lives, wasting our time making money for others who really don't care about us much. Just saying. And one of the most valuable things as we get older is to acknowledge we need less, We really want less. We're happy with less. Keep it quality, not quantity, and enjoy the time. Time is so, so precious. And when you're caring for someone in the twilight of the years, it helps you to prepare for your own twilight much, much more proactively. And that is a very important and special thing. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I don't want to go on too long about it. I don't want to go into too much detail. But if you're looking for help and support, looking after someone with dementia, the first and foremost place you should go for advice are independent, voluntary, local groups where you can meet and connect with other people who are in your situation, because it's not the professional help that really matters. It's the unprofessional, anecdotal advice and support you can get from other people in your situation, and they will tell you what works for them, what doesn't work for them, at which point you can find out what won't work and what will work for you. Good luck, gainers. I'm Ralphie. I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is one of the purposes of the internet, is to share needed information, and do so in a very ordinary, matter-of-fact way, because every little helps, and that's the way it is. I'm Ralphie, and I'll speak to you soon on another subject. Bye-bye.